theist, I am humanist. I think that you're naive. You have no proof to offer as truth. You simply say, I believe. New age bubbles get you in trouble, lost in a feel-good fluff. True understanding is quite demanding. Praying is not enough. Totally unprepared are you to make a case that's plain. Maybe the incense, chants, and drums have you ruined your poor brain. You need someone older and wiser telling you what to do. You are theist, I am humanist. I will think for you.
I am theist, you are humanist. You're locked inside your head. You're existential, self-referential, claiming that God is dead. Occam's razor, Pascal's wager, soulless tautology. Wisdom, tradition, not erudition, make much more sense to me. Totally unprepared are you to let go of your mind. How about a leap of faith, my friend? You might like what you find. When you find that you're out of answers, you won't know what to do. I am theist, you are humanist. I will pray for you. We cannot agree on anything, each has a point of view. I am theist,
I am humanist.
that's why we're you.
Oh, thank you, Rick and Mike. That song makes me laugh. And you know, one thing at church, we want you to take something home. And so ever since Rick and I talked about this song, it's been an earworm. And so now I am sharing it with you. Enjoy. And you know, with humor, it's a throwback to an old UU viewpoint. We're right, and everyone else is wrong. I trust both humanists and theists could laugh. And the song leads us right into what I want to talk about today. No, not whether you believe in God or not. Let's get beyond that tired dichotomy. Instead, I want to talk about the condition of your spiritual beliefs, your spiritual life. And one clue from this song is, do you have room for humor in your outlook on life? I hope so. Sorry. Do you wonder if you're growing wiser over time? I can't help but ponder, how am I coming along? Am I any more mature than I was decades ago or just a week ago? It's not always easy to tell. Alas, age doesn't always equal maturity. So I'm interested today specifically in spiritual wisdom because it informs all other areas of our life. How many brilliant people do you know who lack wisdom, emotional clarity, spiritual maturity? So as Elizabeth Kubler-Ross observes about humanity, each of us has a Gandhi and a Hitler in us. You might want to update those names for yourself to current examples. Many come to mind. I agree with Kubler-Ross. I can see my Gandhi and my Hitler daily. I can be generous and accepting 1 minute, and then cruel and hateful and judgmental the next. Those who live with me can testify. So if you're willing to accept you have a dark side and a more benevolent side all at the same time, my question is, do we have the necessary tools and outlook to move our needle more towards the Gandhi side? Can we become more open-hearted, less self-focused, more forgiving? I'm calling the capacity to become more like Gandhi spiritual maturity. No matter your age, spiritual maturity is about learning how to both live well and die well. Can I reach the end of this body's journey with much less fear and much more love? I know that word spiritual can be a trigger for some, bringing to mind fantasy and fantastical. For the humanists, theists, and all other belief systems here, my definition encompasses you all. Spiritual is not theological hair-splitting like the song. Spirituality is the firm conviction you are part of something larger than yourself. We carry genes of ancestors still dictating our choices today. We carry memories of our life experiences. We respond parasympathetically to all the emotions and feelings of those around us. Spirit is not just some magical notion, but the scientific and religious understanding that others are part of you in an infinite number of ways. Others are part of you. And in turn, you are part of everyone and everything. A profound spirituality means knowing you are valuable, no better, no worse than most others, both Hitler and Gandhi. You with me? In his book, The Music of Silence, Brother David Steindl-Rast, he's a Benedictine monk, and he gives one of the most clearest explanations of spirituality I know. He writes, sometimes people get the mistaken notion that spirituality is some separate department of life, the penthouse of our existence. But rightly understood, it is a vital awareness that pervades all realms of our being. Someone will say, I come alive when I listen to music, or I come to life when I garden, or I come alive when I play golf. Wherever we come alive, that is the area in which we are spiritual. And then we can say, I know at least how one is spiritual in that area, and to be vital, awake, aware in all areas of our life is the task that is never accomplished, but it remains a goal. So Brother David's definition gives us a great starting point to unpack what it means to become more wise, more spiritually mature. Living our life with an open heart is a task we never fully accomplish. Whew. Maybe this sounds exhausting. You'll never finish. But actually, it's a great relief. Perfection is impossible. Uncertainty, mistakes, discomfort are all an essential part of this unfinished business. You know, despite many religious traditions naming some endpoint, paradise, heaven, enlightenment, revelation, these concepts really are more like maps and compasses, not destinations. Wanderers and explorers use the North Star to navigate fully, knowing they're never going to reach the North Star. So too, religious traditions point to a peaceful, fulfilling, non-harming ideal, knowing because we are human, we won't make it to perfection. Let me tell you one of my favorite teaching stories about seeking perfection. So Nesrudin was an ancient 13th century Turkish philosopher and Sufi, and also oftentimes jester. And stories about him are about laughing and learning. So Nesrudin was talking to a friend who asked him, "Have you ever considered getting married, Mullah?" "I have. In my youth, I resolved to find the perfect woman. I crossed the desert and reached Damascus, and I met a lovely spiritual woman, but she knew nothing of the world. I continued my journey and went to Isfahan. There, I met a woman both spiritual and of the material world, but she was not pretty. Then I decided to go to Cairo, where I dined in the house of a beautiful woman who is both religious and a connoisseur of material reality." "Why didn't you marry her then?" "Alas, my friend, she was looking for the perfect man." So just as finding a perfect mate is impossible, a perfect religion is impossible, a perfect spiritual leader, or a perfect spiritual follower. This is where the scandal part of spiritual maturity comes into the picture. It goes against our basic American values. Winning has the utmost value. It fuels our capitalism, educational systems, social systems, and yes, our religious systems. Our competitive ways mean there's a hierarchy with something or someone on top, more perfect than the rest of us down below. So rejecting spiritual perfection means valuing the journey instead. We'll never know everything and everyone. Accepting our very imperfect life is countercultural, and it's a necessity for becoming spiritually wise. If you're a note taker in sermons, I'll try to highlight the points I'm making, because what I have in mind here is a bit of a brief checklist for each of us. There are more points than I could make, but I find it useful to kind of measure myself, to consider the state of my spiritual life and spiritual community even. So hence the first sign of spiritual maturity is that rejection of perfection. This cuts through the rigid orthodoxies. I'm theist, you're humanist. Being right is way overrated. A minister colleague of mine has tattooed on his forearm, "You could be wrong." It's a reminder our journey in this world is messy, unclear, with twists and turns. You could be wrong. Mistakes are welcome. We grant grace to ourselves and to all other. We're doing the best we can in this imperfect body and imperfect mind. So if you accept this premise that imperfection is valuable, then you've just invited in paradox. This is the second point of spiritual maturity, note takers. For our spiritual life to be real, to be based on the full truth of this world, this cosmos even, it must have ways to hold two opposite truths at the same time, 3, 5. It means rejecting either or thinking, black and white thinking. Non-duality is key. Welcoming in both and. Every parent or leader has waded deep into this territory of many things are true all at once. When my children were young, I would struggle wanting to set healthy boundaries about sleep or food or behavior. But I could always see both sides of the situation. Oh man, I was a pushover and felt badly until a wise teacher told me consistency in parenting is overrated. So when I became rigid in my parenting, it was often because I was scared. Take bedtimes, for example. A paradox, if there is one. It is both a big deal and not. I'd always be thinking, no, I cannot explain why 7:30 p.m. is bedtime and not 7:35, other than I'm exhausted. I was scared I was never going to get sleep. I was afraid I was raising undisciplined children. I was convinced bedtime sloppiness was the gateway drug to not studying, to dropping out of school, to having a miserable life, right? You with children or childcare jobs, have you been there? In religious terms, this inability to hold conflicting ideas and needs comes in the form of these exact words must be said in this exact way. Or it means if you don't believe this worldview, you are condemned and you don't belong. This single-mindedness leads to shame, rejection. Many of you might be refugees from a religious tradition that cannot hold both and. And fear again is the driver. If I don't believe this belief and set of rituals, I'm condemned to hell. I've cried many tears as a hospice chaplain after leaving the hospital rooms of a pious and devout patient who is terrified and wants to cram for the dying exam. They are certain they have not been virtuous enough and are going to hell. What can they do in this last moment? How dare any religious tradition arrogantly pile guilt and shame upon people as they lay dying? It is religious abuse. So check in with your spiritual beliefs. Are they flexible enough? Can they bend with human nature? Can they encompass the messiness of the situation? Do they reject either or thinking? 1, imperfection. 2, embrace paradox. 3, make a rock-solid commitment to kindness and generosity. The Dalai Lama is spot on when he declares, "This is my simple religion. There is no need for temples, no need for complicated philosophy. Our own brain, our own heart is our temple. The philosophy is kindness. In the language of all souls, it's love beyond belief, compassion, gentleness, kind-heartedness. There's no point in discussing religion, spirituality, theology, dogma, if the guiding principle is not kindness, with no exceptions. Kindness with no exceptions. So this no exceptions part is where spirituality gets a workout, becomes a serious, challenging path. Okay, I could be kind to most people, but what about my fill in the blank? My ex, the person who broke into my home, the friend who double-crossed me, that odious leader or politician. Wait, I have to be kind and love them? Yes, compassionate to each one of them, because each one of them has both a Gandhi and a Hitler in them, just like you, just like me. Here's an interesting exercise. Every time you harshly judge someone or become furious, add the phrase, just like me, to whatever is bugging you about them. It will soften you a little bit, add tenderness, compassion, Might even heal some of your own hurt and trauma. Damn it, that driver is speeding and cut me off. What a jerk! Oh, wait, just like me. Because life is imperfect and filled with contradictions and paradox, and everyone needs kindness and love, then the fourth essence of a healthy spirituality is humor. At times, it is best to laugh at this wild mess we cannot escape, to have the gift of lightness. I always remind those gathered for a memorial that laughter is appropriate. Tears and laughter share a vulnerability that honors the complex truth of any death, any loss. And humor is sometimes the most piercing way to get the truth across. You know, we can take sacred literature more lightly and not be literal. It's easier to see how the snake in the Garden of Eden is the trickster, disrupting paradise. Because you know, paradise would ultimately be perfect and boring. Last point, note takers, we cannot live this life alone. This is the greatest lie told by our culture, that we're isolated and that we have to do all this by ourselves. The support of a spiritual community is a source of courage, help to put one foot in front of the other. At All Souls and all the Unitarian Universalist churches around the world, we agree to sit side by side with people who have different beliefs. This is a huge commitment and a scandal. To do this demanding task of being open-hearted to others who have a different set of beliefs, we don't need just the right theology, but we need spiritual maturity. When we understand everyone is at a different place in their spiritual journey, we can toss out any notion of perfection, and that's the beginning of humility. When we align our spiritual life with the messiness of reality, we make room for opposites, paradox, humor. And when we acknowledge we are part of larger systems, much greater than we are, then we begin to have a spiritual life that is without limit. I need you. You need me. We need each other. That is the spiritual life. Let's journey together. May it be so. Amen.
Thank you for joining us. For 100 years, All Souls in Tulsa has been a beacon of this free faith. We offer our services and programs freely online for all those who are interested. You can help us to do this by making a one-time gift today or a reoccurring pledge. We really appreciate you joining us and being a part of helping us make All Souls in Tulsa what it is. Thank you.
We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow rich by